Have you ever been absolutely certain you were right, only to realize later that you were just perfectly, brilliantly wrong? Have you ever looked at a failing project, a collapsing relationship, or a stagnant career and blamed the market, the other person, or bad luck, only to discover that the real problem was that you were staring at a brick wall while calling it a horizon? Right now, as you read this, you are holding a piece of a puzzle, but do you have the courage to admit you don't see the whole picture? In the glass and steel heart of Chicago, where the wind howls through the canyons of skyscrapers like a restless ghost, Julian Vane was known as the Fixer. He was a man carved out of obsidian, hard, sharp, and cold. As a top-tier consultant for Fortune 500 companies, Julian's life was an endless loop of business-class flights, overpriced espresso, and the intoxicating hum of power. He could walk into a chaotic boardroom, look at a mountain of crisis, and strip it down to its skeletal frame in minutes. Julian believed in the truth, but to him, truth was a binary code. It was data. It was the cold, hard logic of a spreadsheet. If a human emotion or a subtle nuance couldn't be quantified into a percentage, Julian treated it like noise. He was incredibly fast, terrifyingly sharp, and, though he will never admit it, dangerously arrogant. Julian viewed life through a microscope. He believed that the secret to mastering the world was to master the smallest part. If you understand the mechanism of a single gear, you understand the machine. But in the winter of his 45th year, the machine began to seize. The air in his penthouse felt thin. His firm, once the undisputed lion of the industry, was bleeding clients to younger, more empathetic firms. Worse yet, the silence in his personal life was deafening. His daughter, Maya, hadn't spoken to him in 6 months. Their last argument had been a clinical dissection by Julian on why her choice of a teaching career was suboptimal. He had used logic to win the argument, but in doing so, he had lost his child. "You're missing the elephant, Julian," his mentor, Elias, told him one evening. They were sitting in a quiet corner of a dimly lit library. Elias was 80 years old, a man whose sight had been dimmed by glaucoma decades ago, yet he seemed to navigate the world with a grace that Julian lacked. "What elephant, Elias? I have the market analysis, I see the churn rates, I see the deficits," Julian snapped, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm on the mahogany table. Elias smiled, his sightless eyes turned toward the frosted window. "A man who sees only what he wants to see is blinder than I am, Julian. You are staring at a single thread and claiming you've mastered the tapestry. Go to the valley of my ancestors, find the 6 brothers. If you can solve their dispute, you might just find the piece of yourself you threw away." Desperation is a powerful engine. Julian traveled not because he believed in Elias's riddles, but because his own reflection had become a stranger to him. He found himself in a remote, dust-choked valley in the foothills of the Himalayas, where the air tasted of saffron and old stone. There, in a clearing shaded by ancient banyan trees, he found the 6 brothers. They were men of great age, their faces etched with the wisdom of years, but they were currently engaged in a shouting match that echoed off the valley walls. In the center of their circle stood a creature of immense proportions, an elephant, ancient, gray, and as still as a mountain. The 6 brothers were blind, yet they moved with a frantic certainty. Julian watched, hidden in the shadows, as they approached the beast to define its essence. The first brother stumbled forward and slammed his palms against the elephant's broad, flat side. He stepped back. A triumphant laugh freed his throat. "An elephant? This is no animal. It is a wall. It is vast, immovable, and solid. Anyone who says otherwise is a liar or a fool." The second brother reached out and grasped the razor-sharp, smooth tusk. He recoiled slightly at the coldness of the ivory. "A wall? You've lost your mind, brother. This is a spear. It is a weapon, sleek, dangerous, and designed to pierce. It is the very definition of a point." The third brother stepped into the reach of the trunk. As the muscular appendage coiled around his arm, he shrieked in terror. "You are both mad! This is a snake! I can feel its scales, its terrifying strength, and its unpredictable movements. It is a serpent of the earth, nothing more." The fourth brother reached up and felt the massive, leathery ear as it flapped in the humid breeze. A snake? A spear? Nonsense! This is a fan, a giant velvet fan designed to move the air and bring comfort. It is soft and yielding. The fifth brother wrapped his arms around the elephant's heavy, rough leg. "You are all blind to the truth," he bellowed. "This is a tree. It is a pillar of rough bark, rooted deep into the soil. It represents stability, an unshakable pillar." Finally, the sixth brother, standing at the rear, caught holding of the swinging tail. He scoffed at his siblings. "Wall, spear, snake, fan, tree, you all hallucinate. This is a rope. It is thin, frayed at the end, and hangs from the sky. It is a simple tool." Julian, watching from the periphery, felt a familiar surge of cynicism. "It's so obvious," he thought. "They are all wrong because they are prisoners of their own limited touch. If they just had my eyes, they would see the whole." But as the sun dipped below the jagged peaks of the valley, casting long, distorted shadows, Julian's smirk began to rot. A cold realization washed over him, more piercing than the mountain air. He wasn't just a spectator. He was the seventh blind man. He looked at the elephant, then at his own life. For 20 years, he had treated his employees like legs, mere pillars of labor meant to support the weight of his ambition. He had ignored their ears, their cries for balance, their fears and their insights, dismissing them as unnecessary fans blowing hot air. He had obsessed over the tusk of his quarterly earnings, a sharp weapon he used to gash his competitors, while completely ignoring the side of the company, the culture, the shared humanity, and the fragile heart that kept the entire organism alive. He thought of Maya. To him, she had been a trunk, a squirming, unpredictable element of his life that he tried to twist into a shape that made sense to his data-driven brain. He had never seen the whole of her. He had defined her daughter by one argument, one choice, one missed grade. He had mistaken a single touch for her entire soul. Julian realized that his certainty wasn't a gift, it was a prison cell. He had been so busy being right that he had forgotten how to be real. The brothers began to fight, their voices rising in a crescendo of anger. Julian stepped out from the shadows. "Stop!" he cried. His voice cracked with an emotion he hadn't felt in decades. The brothers fell silent, turning their sightless faces towards the stranger.
"You are all right," Julian said, his heart hammering against his ribs. "And you are all tragically, dangerously wrong. The man at the side is right. The elephant is solid. The man at the tail is right. It is like a rope. But none of you are talking about an elephant. You are talking about your own ego. You are talking about your refusal to believe that someone else's touch is as valid as your own." The oldest brother speaks softly. "How then, traveler, do we see the beast if we are destined to only touch the parts?" Julian looked at the massive, silent creature. "You have to stop shouting," he whispered. "You have to take the hand of the man at the leg and lead him to the trunk. You have to listen to the man at the ear and ask him how the air feels. Truth is not something you possess, it is something you assemble. It is the synthesis of every perspective in this circle. If you don't share what you feel, the elephant will remain a ghost to all of you." This is the psychological trap of the modern leader. We surround ourselves with mirrors, people who touch the same part of the elephant we do, because it validates our bias. We label the person who sees the rope as a disruptor or a failure, because their truth threatens our wall. But a wall without a rope is just a prison, and a spear without a side is just a useless point. Julian returned to Chicago, but the man who stepped off the plane was not the fixer. He walked into his firm and did the unthinkable. He admitted he was blind. He called a general assembly and sat on the edge of the stage, not behind a podium. "I've spent a decade building a wall," he told his staff, "but I forgot to ask if we were building a house. Tell me what I'm missing. Tell me about the spear, the fan, and the tree." The following months were a brutal exercise in humility. Julian had to listen to the noise he had spent years silencing. He heard about the burnout, the hidden genius of the junior clerks, the flaws in his perfect models. He learned that by integrating these parts, the firm didn't just survive, it evolved. They became a whole organization. Finally, he went to Maya. He didn't bring a spreadsheet of her career options. He sat on her porch in the quiet evening and said, "I realized I've spent 20 years trying to measure you. I'm done. Can you just tell me who you are? I want to listen to the parts I was too blind to touch." As she spoke, Julian felt the blindfold of his own certainty fall away. He realized that the elephant of reality is too vast for one person to own. Whether it is a multi-billion-dollar corporation, a family, or the human heart, we are all just blind men in a valley, reaching out into the darkness. The lesson of the elephant is this: your truth is just a fragment. Success, true success, belongs to the leader who has the courage to be quiet, the humility to be wrong, and the wisdom to know that the whole is always infinitely greater than the sum of its parts. What part of the elephant are you holding on to right now? Are you defending your wall while ignoring the spear in someone else's hand? Are you so busy proving you're right that you've forgotten to be effective? The darkness only lifts when we stop shouting and start connecting.